I sat in my Chicago hotel room, sipping a lukewarm coffee, staring at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was a quiet afternoon. Meetings done, emails checked, nothing urgent on my plate. So, I did what anyone would do in a free moment. I picked up my phone and started scrolling through Facebook. That's when I saw it. A fresh post, right at the top of my feed. "Welcome to the world, our little angel." The words blurred for a second as my eyes locked onto the name beneath it, Olivia Carter. My wife. I sat up straighter, my heart giving a confused thump. My wife had just given birth. I hadn't even known she was in labor. No text, no call, nothing. My eyes scanned the picture. Olivia, lying in a hospital bed, her dark hair damp with sweat, but her face was glowing, beaming, really. She looked happy. My in-laws were beside her, their smiles wide with pride. And in her arms, a baby. My baby. Or so I thought. I should have been overwhelmed with emotions. I should have been excited, proud, even relieved. Instead, something felt off. I stared at the photo, dissecting every detail, searching for the reason behind the unease creeping into my chest. That's when I saw it. On the small hospital table beside the bed, nearly out of the frame, lay a black leather wallet and a silver keychain. It was an unmistakable sight. I knew them well, too well, because they weren't mine. They belonged to my brother, Ethan. The coffee cup nearly slipped from my fingers. 1,000 thoughts crashed into my head all at once. Ethan? At the hospital? With Olivia? My breath slowed. My fingers hovered over my phone screen. I could feel the heat rising up my neck, the slow simmer of something dark twisting inside me. I zoomed in on the photo. There was no mistaking it. That wallet, a high-end brand that I had personally gifted him on his last birthday. The keychain? A souvenir from his Las Vegas trip. My vision tunneled. My heartbeat drummed loudly in my ears. I forced my eyes back to the caption. Our little angel. Our? The realization hit me like a brick to the chest. Ethan had been there. He had been there while my wife was giving birth. But why? I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. There had to be a rational explanation. There had to be. Maybe he was just visiting. Maybe he had just dropped by. Maybe. I exhaled slowly, forcing my fingers to type. Congratulations. Wishing you all the best. The words felt like acid in my throat. I hit send and set the phone down carefully beside me. Then, I picked it up again. I wasn't done yet. I tapped open my airline app and searched for the earliest flight back home. I didn't know what I was walking into, but one thing was certain. I was about to find out. I landed in my home city just before dawn, the sky still a deep shade of navy, streetlights casting long shadows on the nearly empty roads. The flight had been a blur, too much adrenaline, too many thoughts racing through my mind to even attempt sleep. I hadn't spoken to Olivia. I hadn't spoken to Ethan. Hell, I hadn't spoken to anyone. I needed facts. Not emotions. Not assumptions. Just cold, undeniable facts. I turned my phone back on the moment I stepped into the airport terminal. A flood of messages and missed calls greeted me. None from Olivia. Not a single one. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Instead of heading home, I hailed a cab and gave the driver a different address. Blackstone Detective Agency. I'd used them before, years ago, when my company needed to investigate an employee suspected of leaking confidential financial data. They were good, thorough, discreet, ruthless. Exactly what I needed now. By the time I arrived at their office, the city was waking up. Workers filtered into high-rise buildings, coffee carts lined the sidewalks, and life went on as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I stepped into the dimly lit lobby of the agency, my pulse steady despite the storm raging inside me. The scent of old wood and stale coffee filled the air. A woman in her 50s, glasses perched on her nose, greeted me from behind the desk. "Mr. Carter." "It's been a while," she said, offering a polite smile. "John Blackstone is expecting you." Of course he was. I followed her down the hall to a familiar office. John Blackstone was exactly as I remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, graying at the temples but sharp-eyed, like a wolf that had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. "Mr. Carter," he said, standing to shake my hand. What can I do for you? I sat down, exhaling through my nose. I need a personal investigation. Completely confidential. His gaze didn't waver. Understood. What are we looking into? I pulled out my phone, opening the Facebook post. I slid it across the desk. My wife just had a baby. I found out through that post. Blackstone frowned but didn't comment. He studied the image with the precision of a surgeon. See the wallet? I tapped the screen. And the keychain? His expression darkened. Whose are they? My brothers. Silence. That was all I needed to say. Blackstone nodded slowly, pulling out a notepad. Tell me everything you suspect. I don't want to jump to conclusions, I said, though the words tasted like a lie. I just need to know the truth. He studied me, his face unreadable. All right, here's what I'll do. First, I'll confirm your brother's whereabouts over the last few months. Travel records, credit card activity, phone logs. If he was somewhere he shouldn't have been, we'll know. I nodded. Good. We'll also dig into your wife's medical records, see who was listed as her emergency contact, who accompanied her to appointments. If your brother's name shows up anywhere, you'll have your answer. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. I think I already do. Blackstone ignored the comment. How deep do you want us to go? I clenched my jaw. As deep as possible. I want timestamps. I want receipts. I want everything. He scribbled something in his notebook. It'll take a few days. Maybe a week. I exhaled slowly, dragging a hand down my face. Fine. Blackstone leaned back in his chair. Do you want us to track your wife too? I hesitated. Did I? I already knew Olivia had lied to me. That much was clear. But did I want to see proof of where she had been, what she had been doing, who she had been doing it with? A slow burn settled in my chest. Yes, I said finally. Track her. And, my voice tightened. Check my parents too. This time, Blackstone did react. His brows lifted slightly. You think they knew? I let out a breath. My mom has always protected Ethan, always made excuses for him. And my dad. He values family image above all else. If they knew and didn't tell me, I didn't finish the thought. Blackstone nodded, closing his notebook. We'll get started immediately. You'll hear from me soon. I stood, shaking his hand. Mr. Carter, he said just as I reached the door. I paused. A lot of clients in your position, they react emotionally when they get the truth. I turned my head slightly. I don't plan on reacting. His eyes gleamed. Good. I left the office feeling nothing. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Not betrayal. Just cold, quiet determination. I didn't have to react yet, because I didn't have all the facts. But when I did, that was when the real war would begin. I barely slept that night. Not that I expected to. I sat in my darkened apartment, staring at my phone, waiting for an update. The city outside my window was alive. Cars moving, people laughing, lights blinking in the distance. The world kept turning like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. At 7:14 a.m., my phone vibrated. Blackstone. I swiped to answer before the second ring. Talk to me. We found something. His voice came through, low and steady. No hesitation, no small talk. Just the facts, exactly what I needed. I grabbed a notepad. Go ahead. We ran your brother's financials first, Blackstone continued. Ethan never left the city. In fact, he never booked an overseas trip at all. I closed my eyes. I knew it. Instead, he went on. We tracked his activity to the Ritz-Carlton, 2 miles from Memorial Hospital. He stayed there for 3 nights last month, 1 week before your wife gave birth. My grip tightened on the pin. And we got security footage. The words sent a slow, cold chill down my spine. I forced my voice to stay calm. What does it show? Blackstone hesitated just for a second. We have multiple clips of Ethan and Olivia entering the hotel together. No luggage. Just them. Different nights. Different times. My chest felt tight, like I had been holding my breath for too long. But I had asked for the truth. And now I had it. I swallowed down the growing fire in my throat. Any timestamps? The earliest one goes back over a year. A year. So this wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't some impulsive lapse in judgment. It was planned. It was deliberate. It was a full-blown affair. I exhaled through my nose, forcing my emotions into a box. Blackstone wasn't done. We also pulled phone records. I grabbed my coffee, even though my hands felt too unsteady to drink it. Go on. In the last 12 months, your wife and Ethan have exchanged over 400 phone calls. I barked out a bitter laugh. 400. More than once a day. Every day. How many of those were while I was traveling? Blackstone paused. 85%. I set the coffee down before I shattered the cup. He continued. Texts are encrypted, but we have frequency data. We're looking at thousands of messages. Some days, over 100. I clenched my jaw. How the hell had I missed this? I had spent years believing I was building a life with a woman who loved me. Meanwhile, she had been sleeping with my brother behind my back. But Blackstone still wasn't finished. We pulled her medical records. My heart pounded. And he hesitated. What is it? My voice came out sharper than I intended. The records show she listed Ethan as an emergency contact. Not you. I shot up from my chair, knocking the table with my knee. Excuse me? You heard me, Blackstone said, voice measured. Ethan was listed as the primary emergency contact. Not just for one appointment, for the entire pregnancy. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Not once. Not even once had she put my name down. Every time she went in for a checkup, every time they ran a test, every time there was any complication or concern, I was never the one they called. It had always been him. I swallowed, gripping the edge of my desk. My voice, when I finally found it, was eerily calm. What else? Blackstone exhaled. We confirmed a few more things. Purchases. I didn't sit back down. I just listened. For the last 6 months, Ethan has been buying baby products. Clothes, nursery furniture, strollers, even high-end prenatal vitamins. Of course, he had. Of course. We also have footage from Memorial Hospital. Ethan was there multiple times with her for checkups. He even drove her to the hospital the night she gave birth. The room suddenly felt too small. Too hot. I tugged at my collar, pacing a slow circle around my kitchen. She knew I was on a business trip, I murmured. More to myself than him. She did, Blackstone agreed. She planned it this way. She did. My hand curled into a fist. I had known the moment I saw that wallet and keychain. But now, I had proof. My wife, the woman I had loved, supported, trusted, had never been carrying my child. She had been carrying my brother's. I exhaled through my teeth. I assume you found more? We did, Blackstone said. But this is enough to prove everything. I nodded once, forcing the rage down. This wasn't the time to explode. Not yet. Keep digging, I said. Are you sure? This is already enough? I said keep digging. There was more to this story, and I would know all of it before I made my next move. I hung up, gripping my phone so tight my knuckles ached. Then, I looked at the wedding photo on the wall. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel love when I looked at Olivia's face. I felt nothing but cold, calculating fury. She had played her game. Now, it was my turn. I didn't go home that night. Home wasn't home anymore. Instead, I found myself in a dimly lit bar downtown, nursing a whiskey on the rocks, my mind running in an endless loop. The ice clinked against the glass as I swirled it, staring at the amber liquid like it held answers. 1 year. For an entire year, my wife had been lying to my face. For an entire year, my brother had been sleeping with my wife while I was out building a life for us. For an entire year, my family, my own parents, had been complicit in this betrayal. The weight of it pressed against my chest like a steel beam, but I didn't break. No, I was far past breaking. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and opened my email. Blackstone had sent me another update. Mr. Carter. We dug deeper. Ethan never had an overseas business trip booked at any point in the last year. However, we did find something interesting. Instead of traveling abroad, he was booking multiple stays at the Ritz-Carlton, always coinciding with your own business trips. Attached were receipts, room numbers, and surveillance footage timestamps. Every time I left for work, he checked into a 5-star hotel right near my house. Every single time. I exhaled, gripping my glass so tight my knuckles turned white. He had never even tried to cover his tracks. Because he had never needed to. Because Olivia was helping him hide it. I scrolled further down the email. We also traced his credit card usage to high-end baby boutiques, prenatal spa treatments, and, perhaps most damning of all, hospital bills under his name. Not only had he been present during her pregnancy, but he had financially contributed. Ethan wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was planning a life with her. And I had been nothing but a blind, trusting fool. I lifted the whiskey to my lips, the burn sharp against my throat. I didn't flinch. I let it sit, let the fire match the one in my chest. Then, I scrolled further. The next attachment made my stomach turn. A vacation booking. 2 months ago, while I was in California for a corporate seminar, Ethan and Olivia had taken a week-long getaway at an upscale hot spring resort. There were photos of them at dinner, smiling, of Olivia resting her head against Ethan's shoulder, of them in matching white robes, walking through a garden. My wife, my brother, on a lover's vacation. I let out a slow breath, setting my glass down carefully. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't some reckless, one-time betrayal. This was a life they had built together, and they had been playing me as their unwitting fool. I rubbed my temple, pushing my exhaustion aside. Now wasn't the time to feel. It was time to act. I pulled up Blackstone's number and dialed. He picked up on the second ring. Carter. Keep digging, I said flatly. I'd say we've got more than enough already. Not for me. A pause. Then a sigh. All right. What else? Pull Olivia's bank statements. See if she's been moving money anywhere. Another pause. Then, you think she's hiding assets? I think she's been planning something bigger than just an affair, I murmured. If Olivia had been willing to betray me this deeply, who's to say she hadn't already planned for an exit? Blackstone exhaled. I'll have something for you soon. I ended the call and stared at my phone screen for a long moment. I could feel it now, the end creeping closer. And when it came, I wouldn't be the one left shattered. They would. By the time the sun rose, I was no longer tired. I had crossed over into something else entirely. I went home, showered, shaved, put on my suit. Today, I was going to play my part. I didn't storm into the house, demanding answers. I didn't make a scene. Instead, I walked in like a husband returning from a business trip, because that's what Olivia expected. She was in the kitchen when I arrived, cradling the baby in her arms, her hair up in a messy bun. When she saw me, she gasped, eyes widening in surprise. Nathan, she smiled, setting the baby down in the bassinet. You're back early. I dropped my suitcase by the door and smiled back, like I wasn't staring at a woman who had destroyed my life. Yeah, I said, keeping my voice casual. Meetings wrapped up sooner than expected. Her eyes flickered, a hesitation, because she wasn't prepared for this. I glanced at the baby, the child she had been so eager to present to the world. A child I now knew wasn't mine. Congratulations, I said smoothly. Sorry I wasn't here sooner. Her smile faltered slightly. Oh, no, it's fine. It all happened so fast. I tilted my head. Did it? She blinked, suddenly uneasy. Well, yes. You know how these things go. I kept my expression neutral. Right. And you had support, at least? Her shoulders stiffened. I let my gaze drift, ever so casually, toward the wallet and keychain sitting on the table. She noticed. And that's when I saw it. The flicker of panic behind her eyes. A crack in the carefully built facade. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, I leaned in and kissed her cheek. A slow, deliberate gesture. I felt her flinch, just slightly. Good. I pulled away, smiling like I didn't have enough evidence to destroy her life. I'll take a shower, I said smoothly. Then maybe we can talk. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, clutching the baby like a lifeline. And as I climbed the stairs, I pulled out my phone and checked my email. A new message from Blackstone. Subject, additional findings, urgent. I smiled. The real game was about to begin. I stood in front of my parents' house, my hands resting inside the pockets of my coat, the evening air crisp against my skin. The house was exactly as I remembered. Familiar, warm, the very definition of a place that should have felt like home. But tonight, it felt like enemy territory. Inside, they were all waiting for me. Olivia, Ethan, my parents, and a child that didn't belong to me. I had spent the last week gathering every shred of evidence Blackstone had sent my way. I had read through bank statements, phone logs, credit card transactions, and damning surveillance footage. I had watched my wife and my brother meet in hotel lobbies, seen their private dinners, studied their smiles. I had seen my mother's name attached to money transfers to Olivia. I had listened to recorded calls between my father and Ethan, both of them whispering about how Nathan will never find out. I had replayed every conversation, every moment of deception, every instance where they had looked me in the eye and pretended nothing was wrong. And now? Now, it was time to return the favor. I exhaled slowly, rolled my shoulders back, and rang the doorbell. The seconds stretched. Then, the door swung open. My mother's face lit up in surprise. "Nathan, what are you doing here?" I smiled. Calm, polite, cold. "Family meeting," I said simply. She hesitated, her eyes darting behind me as if expecting someone else to be standing there. When she saw I was alone, she stepped aside, forcing a smile. "Of course. Come in." I stepped into the house, the scent of dinner still lingering in the air. In the living room, the others sat waiting. Ethan on the couch, Olivia next to him, my father beside my mother. A perfect little picture of domestic betrayal. I took my time, shrugged off my coat, set my bag down carefully on the floor. The silence stretched, thick with unease. Finally, Olivia spoke. "Nathan, this is a surprise." I met her gaze. "Is it?" She shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Ethan. He avoided my eyes, suddenly very interested in the drink in his hand. My father cleared his throat. "Nathan, son, we weren't expecting you." I leaned against the arm of a chair, looking at each of them in turn. "No," I said evenly. "You weren't." More silence. Then I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. One tap, and the first image filled the screen. Olivia and Ethan. Hotel lobby. Hands brushing. Smiling. My mother sucked in a sharp breath. Another tap. Ethan at a baby boutique, paying for an overpriced stroller. Another tap. Olivia's medical record. Emergency contact. Ethan Carter. A choked noise escaped Olivia's throat. "Nathan, I." Another tap. A phone log. 400 plus calls. Thousands of messages. All between them. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. "What's the lie you were going to tell me this time?" I asked. No one spoke. I tilted my head, looking at my brother. "You, Ethan? Would you have gone with your usual brotherly concern excuse? Maybe said you were just looking out for Olivia while I was working my ass off to build a future for her?" Ethan's jaw clenched. He finally met my eyes, but he didn't say a word. "Or maybe you, Olivia?" I continued. "Would you have tried to cry? Told me it was all a misunderstanding? That somehow you accidentally slept with my brother, accidentally carried his child, and accidentally let me believe the baby was mine?" Her face paled. "It wasn't." I lifted a finger, cutting her off. "No, no more lies." I turned to my parents. "And you?" My father's expression darkened. "Nathan, son, let's not do this here." I let out a breath. A slow, bitter chuckle. "Not here? Then where? Dad, where should we do this? Because I've spent the last 5 years sitting at this table, in this house, thinking we were a family." My mother wiped at her eyes. "Nathan, please." I cut her a sharp look. "You knew." She flinched. "You sent Olivia money." I tapped my phone again, and a bank transfer popped up. Her name. My mother's account. I traced it. "You were financially supporting your son's affair with my wife. Don't you dare cry, Mom. Not now." She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. My father's hands curled into fists. "We didn't mean for this to happen." I stared at him, feeling something inside me crack wide open. "Didn't mean for it?" I repeated, voice deathly quiet. "You knew. You both knew. And you let me walk around like an idiot, playing husband to a woman who was carrying another man's child. Your other son's child." My mother let out a sob. My father sighed heavily, as if this entire conversation was nothing but an inconvenience. Olivia swallowed. Nathan, please. I never wanted it to be this way. I turned to her. But you let it be. I leaned forward, bracing my hands on the table. Let me tell you how this is going to go. Ethan tensed. You too, I gestured between them, are going to deal with the fallout of this alone. I will make sure your affair becomes public knowledge. Your hospital job? Gone. Your precious social status? Gone. Olivia gasped. You wouldn't. I smiled. A cold, merciless smile. Oh, Olivia. I absolutely would. I turned to my brother. And you? I've already sent everything to your company's HR department. Might want to check your inbox. Ethan's face twisted with fury. You think you can destroy me? I met his gaze without blinking. I think you destroyed yourself. I straightened and turned to my parents. As for you two? My mother lifted her tear-streaked face. I won't be back, I said simply. I don't have parents anymore. Her lips parted, eyes wide with grief. Nathan, no. You made your choice, I said, voice devoid of emotion. Now live with it. I picked up my phone, slid it into my pocket, and grabbed my coat. No one tried to stop me. As I reached the door, Olivia called out, voice desperate. Nathan, please, don't do this. I turned, giving her one last look. Do what? I asked quietly. Leave you? She nodded frantically, hands clutching at her chest. I laughed. A dry, hollow sound. Oh, Olivia. I shook my head. You left me a long time ago. Then, without another word, I stepped outside. And I didn't look back. I drove in silence. No music. No radio. Just the low hum of the engine as I navigated the streets, headlights cutting through the darkness. My hands were steady on the wheel. My breathing even. My mind? Sharpened like a blade. The confrontation had gone exactly as I expected. Shock. Denial. Weak excuses. Pleading. And now? Now, I was waiting. I had left the house deliberately unfinished. I hadn't given them everything. Hadn't let them know just how much I had already set in motion. Because I needed to see what they would do next. And right on cue, my phone buzzed. I didn't have to look. I knew who it was. I let it ring. It rang again. And again. I smirked, shaking my head. Olivia was panicking now. Good. I pulled into the parking lot of a hotel, not one of the fancy ones Ethan had been taking her to. No, I chose a mid-range business hotel, something impersonal, unremarkable. Because that's exactly what Olivia was to me now. Nothing. As I stepped out of the car, my phone buzzed once more. This time, I answered. I didn't say a word. Nathan? Olivia's voice came through, breathless, shaking. Please talk to me. I leaned against my car, watching my reflection in the dark window. Silence stretched between us. She let out a soft sob. Nathan, don't, I cut in, my voice cold. She sucked in a sharp breath. I could almost picture her, standing in the house we used to share, hands trembling, eyes darting to Ethan for guidance. I wanted to hear what she would say next. Would she beg? Try to manipulate me? Pretend this was all some big misunderstanding? Her next words made my stomach turn. It wasn't just about you, she whispered. I know this hurts, but we didn't mean for it to happen this way. I let out a slow, bitter laugh. And how exactly did you mean for it to happen? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know. Bullshit. She had always known. She just hadn't expected to get caught. You were supposed to keep believing the baby was yours, I said flatly. Silence. That was all the confirmation I needed. I exhaled, gripping the phone tighter. How long were you going to let me raise him before telling me? She let out a soft, choked sound. Nathan, A year? I continued. 2? Or were you just going to let me sign the birth certificate and make me legally responsible for a child that isn't even mine? Nathan, please. Answer me. More silence. I pushed away from the car, pacing. You know what I think? I think you were never going to tell me. I think you and Ethan had this whole thing planned from the start. No, she burst out. It wasn't like that. Then tell me, I snapped. Tell me what it was like, Olivia. Walk me through it. When did it start? Was it before we got married? Right after? Or did you wait until I was out of town to screw my brother behind my back? She gasped at the harshness of my words. Good. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of what I had felt. Nathan, she whispered, her voice breaking. I loved you. I closed my eyes. Past tense. Loved. That single word cut deeper than any knife. But I refused to bleed. I exhaled, shaking my head. You don't do this to someone you love, Olivia. She started crying then. Big, dramatic sobs. But I felt nothing. Because I knew these weren't the tears of remorse. They were the tears of a woman whose lies had collapsed around her. I didn't want to hurt you, she whimpered. I barked out a laugh. But you did. And you didn't stop. Not for a whole damn year. More silence. I glanced up at the night sky, my chest feeling strangely light. Like something had lifted off of me. Like I was finally free. So tell me, I continued, voice smooth now, controlled. What's next? You gonna run off with Ethan? Start a new life together? Her breathing hitched. I don't know. Let me guess, I said dryly. You expected me to fight for you? She didn't respond. I scoffed. Not happening, Olivia. I heard a muffled voice in the background. Ethan. Of course, he was listening. I rolled my eyes. Put him on the phone. She hesitated. I smiled. You can do it, sweetheart. He's your man now, right? A long pause. Then a rustling noise. Ethan's voice came through, tight with anger. Nathan. I hummed. Hey, brother. A sharp inhale. You don't have to do this. I tilted my head, amused. Do what? This, he snapped. Dragging this out. Making her cry. Haven't you hurt her enough? A slow grin spread across my face. This idiot really thought he could play the protector now? You have some nerve, I said, my voice laced with venom. Stealing my wife. Lying to my face. And now? Now, you want to act like I'm the villain? His silence told me everything. I let out a low chuckle. Ethan, you're not just a backstabbing coward. You're a delusional backstabbing coward. His voice dropped. Nathan, listen. No. You listen. I cut in, deadly calm. I'm going to ruin you. Both of you. Ethan sucked in a breath. Nathan, you don't have to. Oh, but I do, I interrupted. And the best part? I'm not even angry anymore. I smiled into the phone. I'm just done. Then I hung up. I stared at my reflection in the car window, exhaling through my nose. That was it. The final conversation. I had nothing left to say to either of them. The next time we spoke would be in a courtroom, and I was going to make damn sure I walked away with everything. I woke up the next morning with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. No hesitation. No second-guessing. Just a quiet, razor-sharp focus. It was time to set everything in motion. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, scrolled through my contacts, and pressed dial. The line rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. Mr. Carter, I was expecting your call. Sarah Cohen, my divorce attorney, one of the best in the business. We're moving forward, I said without preamble. She didn't need to ask why. We had already discussed the terms yesterday, after I had walked into her office, laid out every single piece of evidence, and told her in a measured tone. I want them to lose everything. Now, it was time to make sure that happened. Good, she said briskly. We'll file today. You're in a strong position. With the evidence we have, we can demand full financial compensation and ensure Olivia walks away with nothing but her mistakes. I exhaled, gripping the phone. Do it. I could hear her scribbling something down. And Ethan? A slow, cold smile spread across my lips. I'll handle him separately. By noon, Olivia had been officially served. I imagined the moment vividly. Her opening the door, seeing the legal papers, her eyes going wide with panic as the realization sank in. I didn't need to imagine for long. At exactly 12:07 p.m., my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Olivia. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again, and again. Then came the texts. Olivia. Nathan, please. Let's talk about this. Olivia. You don't have to do this. Olivia. At least think about the baby. Please. That last message almost made me laugh. She was still trying to use the baby against me. Still trying to manipulate me. She was pathetic. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the messages to Sarah. She replied a minute later. Do not engage. Anything she says can be used against her in court. I smirked. Oh, I planned on using everything. I wasn't about to let Ethan walk away unscathed either. The same morning Olivia was served, I sent an email to his company's HR department with a detailed report of his misconduct, including his misuse of corporate funds for personal trips, the hotel stays, the lavish dinners, the unauthorized charges on the company credit card, all neatly compiled into a document with receipts attached. I didn't just send it to HR. I sent it to his CEO, his direct supervisor, and the entire executive board. By the time Ethan realized what was happening, it was too late. At 3:42 p.m., I received a forwarded email from a contact inside his company. Subject, termination notice, Ethan Carter. I leaned back in my chair, stretching my arms. One down. I knew Ethan would be calling soon. I was right. At 3:50 p.m., my phone rang. I answered this time. Nathan, you son of a bitch. Ethan's voice came through, furious, desperate. I took a sip of my coffee. Afternoon, brother. You think this is funny, he snarled. You just got me fired. I smirked. No, Ethan. You got yourself fired. I just helped speed up the process. His breathing was ragged. You have no idea what you've done. I let out a slow breath, feigning disappointment. See, that's where you're wrong. I know exactly what I've done. You took my wife. You tried to steal my life. Now I'm returning the favor. Ethan let out a frustrated growl. You're a bitter, pathetic bastard. You couldn't satisfy Olivia, so she came to me. I chuckled, shaking my head. And now? She's stuck with you. Enjoy that, Ethan. I mean it. I hung up before he could say another word. By the next day, Olivia's world was crumbling. She had expected to walk away with at least half of everything, the house, alimony, assets, but she hadn't counted on the ironclad prenup. Sarah had pulled up the document and grinned. She gets nothing. She was unfaithful. She committed fraud by letting you believe the baby was yours. And with the evidence we have, the judge will rule in our favor. And he did. By the end of the proceedings, Olivia walked away with zero financial support, no claim to my assets, and full responsibility for raising Ethan's child on her own. I made sure of it. By the time the dust settled, she was drowning in legal fees, unpaid rent, and a social reputation in shambles. At 9:32 p.m. that night, I received one last text from her. Olivia, I hope you're happy, Nathan. I stared at it for a long moment before typing my response. Nathan, for the first time in a long time, I am. Then, I blocked her number. The last piece of this puzzle was my parents. I hadn't forgotten them. The moment I sent my final text to Olivia, I made another call, to a real estate agent. The house my parents had lived in for decades, it was in my name. They had begged me to put it under my ownership years ago, so it wouldn't be taxed if they ever decided to pass it down. And now, I was evicting them. I didn't do it out of malice. I did it because they chose Ethan over me. Because they let me walk blindly into betrayal. Because they didn't deserve to keep their comfortable lives after standing by and watching mine burn. At 10:15 a.m. the next morning, I sent them an email. Subject, eviction notice, effective immediately. My mother called within minutes. I didn't answer. I had nothing left to say to them. By the end of the week, Olivia was out of my life. Ethan was jobless and disgraced. My parents were forced to relocate, their reputation in shambles. And me? I was free. 1 year later, I stood in my new office, a promotion, a fresh start, a new life. I no longer looked back. I no longer cared about the people who had betrayed me. All I cared about was the future. And this time, I would build it without them. 1 year. 365 days since I walked out of that house for the last time. Since I looked Olivia in the eye and told her she had already lost me. Since I hung up on Ethan, knowing full well that his life was about to burn to the ground. And now, I stood in front of the glass window of my new office, corner office, top floor, CityView. My name was on the door. Nathan Carter, Director of Global Compliance. I had spent a decade building my career, and yet it wasn't until I left the dead weight of my past behind that I truly started moving forward. This was real success. Not the fake, curated life I had with Olivia. Not the empty conversations at dinner where she pretended to care about my day while secretly texting my brother. This was freedom. I took a slow sip of my coffee, scrolling through the news on my phone. It didn't take long before I found it. Former Goldman and Partners analyst denied new position on West Coast. I smirked. Ethan. A year had passed, and he still hadn't recovered. After he lost his job, he had tried to rebuild. Tried to find another company willing to take him in. But word had spread fast. His reputation was poison. No firm wanted to hire a man with a history of financial misconduct and ethical violations. The last I heard, he had relocated to a smaller firm in a second-rate city, making less than a third of what he used to. Poetic justice. I swiped to the next article. Memorial Hospital Nursing License Suspension Appeal Rejected. I exhaled through my nose. Olivia. After losing her job at the hospital, she had tried everything to claw her way back. She filed appeals, begged for leniency, even tried to shift blame onto me. But the facts were ironclad. A registered nurse, having an affair with her husband's brother while carrying his child? Lying about paternity? No board was going to reinstate her. Now, she was working minimum wage at a clinic, barely scraping by. I could only imagine the reality of her life now. Single mother, no career, no support. She had gotten exactly what she deserved. I flicked off my phone and glanced at my reflection in the window. There was no smugness in my expression. No gloating. Just peace. I straightened my tie and grabbed my briefcase. Today was an important day. My first major presentation to the board as director. But before I headed to the conference room, my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the notification. Dinner reservation confirmed, 7 p.m. I smiled. I had met someone. Not a rebound. Not a rushed attempt to fill the void Olivia had left. She was different. Smart. Confident. Uncomplicated. And for the first time in years, I was allowing myself to move forward. Not with revenge. Not with bitterness. But with genuine excitement for the future. I pocketed my phone and walked toward the boardroom. As I reached the door, my assistant, Jessica, smiled. "The board is ready for you, Mr. Carter." I nodded. "Let's begin." I stepped inside, closing the door on my past once and for all. And I never looked back. Revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well.